Hello, this is Hugo Prévost, and you are listening to SVGA, your PC retro gaming podcast. Today is episode number 16, and of course, this wouldn't be SVGA without Robert Hiltz. Hello, Robert.
Hello, Hugo. How's it going?
I'm fine, and you?
Not too bad.
It's been a while. It's been, we're both quite busy, but it's always a pleasure to talk to you and to talk about video games, of course. I think this week would you describe it as a retro game?
I would describe it as... No, I wouldn't describe it as a retro game. I would describe it as a... Well, maybe I would actually. It is retro in its aesthetic and yeah. So yes, I would describe it's a new game, but it is retro in basically everything about it.
Yeah, it's so new. It's still in early access. These days it's not really a characteristic of a new-ish game. Sometimes games linger in early access for years, but yeah, this one is really, really new. It still smells like a new car or maybe a new plane. So what did we play this week, Robert?
This week we were playing Tiny Combat Arena.
Tiny Combat Arena indeed is a simulation game, a same game from MicroProse. MicroProse, who was a quite important developer and publisher in the end of the 80s,
Early
in the 90s.
Yeah.
And they basically, went bankrupt or were bought by another company or something like that in the early 2000s.
One of those ones that, I remember that, and then they just disappeared.
Yeah, they slowly went away. They mostly did, simulation games, basically World War II same games and stuff like that. I think they did Penzo General amongst other things.
That's correct.
And so, yeah, they're back. They're bringing it back, mostly with the retro aesthetic, as you said. And I think they have released besides this one game for now, which is High Fleet, which is a spaceship or flying ship combat simulation strategy game.
I think they also have an aircraft carrier simulator as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, they did. Just clicking frantically away on the website of MicroProse. They did. What's the name of the game? And now I'm scrolling and I can't find it. Maybe if I click on the games, but yeah, Carrier Command 2.
There it is. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The first one was modern-ish in its aesthetic, and then they went back to something from the 80s a bit with more less polygons, more pixels, more retro fun, if you can call it that. So anyway, Tiny Combat Arena, so we did try it for a little while, and it's, basically, like I said, flying simulation game. You control about 5 or 6 airplanes in total?
Yeah, I think at the moment there's only one that is flyable, which is the Harrier jump jet, which listeners may remember. But there's several other jets, and you're basically... it's interesting because it's not a full simulation. Like you're not doing the whole thing. You're on an island, and there are 2 teams, red versus blue. So the Russians and Americans basically, and you have ground forces that are doing their thing, and you're in the air trying to help your team win by taking over bases and bombing things, and yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned that it wasn't a full simulation. I know you are a big fan of flying simulations.
Oh, yes.
And of course, you cannot, if you listening right now to the episode, you cannot see the humongous hardware that Robert bought with his hard $1, but
it weighs more than a small child.
So what did you buy exactly, Robert?
I bought it is a Virpil Mongoose CM3. I may have screwed up the name here, but it is it's an absurd HOTAS throttle. It's made of actual metal. Like it has more hat switches than most joysticks have buttons. I'm not even kidding about that. It's got it's really too much as a thing, but I love it. But you really have to be at least a little deranged to want and then actually get one.
I mean, we did a whole episode about flight controls, and I think what we were able to we thought the same thing. Basically, usually more buttons is better, just for the sake of having more buttons. It's the same thing as having board games with 1,000 pieces. It's just that, there's so much stuff, and it's just the fun of having stuff, basically. But
I could use more buttons, actually, it turns out.
But yeah, so were you able to put your put this to good use in the game?
I mean, yes. It didn't require nearly as many buttons that I have. Like I didn't use any of the 2 position switches, which I'm not sure if you'll be able to actually hear these, but it's essentially it takes the idea of a simulation of like, okay, it's going to have a serious flight model where, you can stall your plane. Your afterburners aren't like a nitro boost. You have an amount of fuel that you can use. Like you have more bombs, you're less maneuverable if you have so it takes that part of it serious, but it also strips out a lot of the heavier simulation stuff. Like, you're not worrying about, warming up systems and, configuring your navigation and all that stuff. It's once you're in the plane, you go to a menu and you say, okay, I want to do a bombing mission. So I want these things, and it loads your thing and you take off and you go bomb some tanks or buildings or whatever it is. But you still have okay, landing is not the easiest thing in the world. Like you have to, get on a proper glide slope, or use the hover and do it that way. But that's again not simple, but it walks the line between the really in depth. You need to learn how each system works. With the sort of like you can just sort of jump in a plane and go. I mean, for me, this was a lot easier because I spent a lot of time learning the systems and all that in different jets, but in a much more in-depth simulation. So for me, this was like, it was straightforward. Like I didn't have any issues with that. How was the experience for you?
I mean, it has been a while since I've played any flight sim. I played a lot of Elite Dangerous before I moved last year, and it's been almost a year and a half now. And since I didn't really have the time to, I mean, usually I take sometimes once every 2 or 3 months to dust off my joysticks and throttles and so on. But I never really took the time to, basically, that's not true. Once I bought the game Project Wingman, which I've read good reviews about, and which is, it's a bit more arcadey, but still it has HOTAS support and so on and so on, because I've played Ace Combat 7 a few months back, and it's really, really just controller support, and it's okay, but it's really an arcade game. And so I wanted to try Project Wingman, and I was a bit disappointed to see that there wasn't any HOTAS support. And you can basically, you can use a controller, you can use a basic joystick. I could have used my joystick and not the joystick with the throttle, and it was a bit lazy and was a bit disappointed, so I just did something else. And so going back to Tiny Combat Arena, I went there thinking, I'm going to just be able to plug in my HOTAS, which is a Thrustmaster 16 million thousand. I don't know how many zeros.
1600, but
there's about 100 zeros after the 16. And so which is a really good model if you ever want to get a HOTAS. But I don't know what's the price is now. I guess it's the same as the model number, so 1,600,000 million and so on. At the time, it cost me $150, which is
it's really it's a really quality thing. Like if I hadn't, I went like way beyond that because
it's you. That's
slight
okay.
Psychosis, but
we all have our troubles and our problems.
But it was only basically because of supply chain issues. Like I would have been paying not quite this much, but the variation wasn't there for what is actually quite a good piece of kit.
Yeah.
Anyways, I've distracted.
Once again, going back to Tiny Combat, so I plugged in my HOTAS kit, and it recognizes that it's plugged in, but I'm guessing it's the early access part of the game, which is there's no music in the menu, and they tell you, well, if you plug in a HOTAS, you have to configure everything, all the controls by yourself. And I was like, are you kidding me? Are you really doing this to me? And so I just took out my controller, my Xbox controller, and tried to fly a few sorties, and it basically went okay.
That's
in the
good.
Sense that you can, as I did, just have your controller and fly around with the joysticks and try to discover which buttons is the radar, which button is the missile, and discovering which button shoots the gun is pretty easy. But of course, the aspect of I didn't really go into the aspect of learning the systems in depth and discovering that it was basically just trying to survive and to be able to steer myself and not plunge it to the ground after 30 seconds. And when I tried to do which is what is the main, supposedly, it's supposed to be the main attraction is, like you said, the assault on the island. You have to protect your troops and bomb the enemy and so on and so on. And I was shut down in a matter of seconds. And I flew really, really too close to what I discovered was anti-air armored vehicles on the ground. And instead of just showing your plane exploding and having a screen say game over or you're bad at it or whatever else, I just started spinning because I lost a wing. But it's not okay. It's not you're not going to explode. We're going to make you suffer with a wing missing, and you'll just have to eventually just decide to end it and crash in the ground or just go back to the menu and try again. And for that, I think it's +1 for realism, I guess.
Well, and this is what I love about it is that it's a very arcade scenario where you've got like two giant armies on this tiny island, and so it's very straightforward. Everything is kind of out in the open, and we haven't talked a lot about the graphics, which we should get into a little bit, but it's very much 1990s, mid 90s. Textures don't exist in the way that it's just like it's a flat color per polygon, basically. Which for me is like, okay, well, I'm just playing like a flight sim from my childhood. It in the cockpit and stuff, it is a little more advanced than that. It's like it still takes advantage of modern technology. And one of the interesting things is it's coded, the whole thing, by one guy. This is one person who has made the thing, which is kind of really interesting about it.
And the thing is, I Googled it a bit, and that same person started by developing a game called Tiny Combat Legacy, which is basically the new name of the old game. I'm guessing it was just called Tiny Combat before. And I'm guessing it was picked up by MicroProse, who decided, this is really good, and we want to publish it and maybe give you some funds to develop it further. And so basically you can still... I'm guessing you can still get the demo of the Tiny Combat Legacy on itch.io. and but yeah, it's not supported anymore, and just it's an old version. It's from 2020, so it's
right.
If you want to have the newer thing, the best version in quotes here,
and it's in early access and so on. But like when it first released, it came with a bunch of bugs, or because it's a new thing, and they were fixed within a week and a half, something. Because I bought this immediately because I knew it was like, and I really, really like this game. Like it's one that okay, I've got an hour and I want to play a flight sim, but I don't have the time to I got to sit on the aircraft carrier. I got to wait for my navigation system to align. I have to make sure all my waypoints are correct. I got to start up my don't have to do it. I can just get in the thing. I can go. I can bomb some stuff. I can land, rearm, take off, and it's all everything's within. You don't have to fly 20 minutes to get to a waypoint. It's just you take off. There's the stuff on the ground. I bomb it. I go back home. It's I love it. I really, really like it.
And I do too. And I mean, basically, I understand. I see. I really love the small things. Like you said, you have limited fuel reserves. There's a button that discovered very early that lets you look around the cockpit. And if you can try to see, it can be useful to check on the instruments, but also, are you being followed by a MiG who's going to shoot you down with a missile and send it in your ass, and so on and so on. And if you fly over the water, and this is what I discovered early too, and it was blown away. There's an effect of the plane over the water, so basically a trail. Because of the blast of
wake kind of thing.
Of the blast of the engines, and it's not some stuff that you would have seen in 1995.
No, that's the thing, is it's got the feel of something from 1995, but it's just using that in the way that kind of Team Fortress 2 is a cartoon. It takes something simple but adds a bunch of complexity to it because but it keeps it from getting, this way a single person can create the whole thing, basically. And it works, is what I love.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the point where the middle point between playing Afterburner. I don't know if you remember that game on the console.
Right.
It was really, really arcadey. And so middle point between Afterburner and playing, I think it's called DGS, the game DCS, which seems to be you can blow yourself up on the runway if you click the wrong button at the wrong time.
It's some planes, if you pull the stick too hard, you rip your own wings off.
Yeah. So, and I can understand the need to, and I think we talked about this, doing some work while we play a game.
Yeah.
But I still want to be able to do like Tom Cruise and Top Gun and be on the aircraft carrier and just being catapulted with a launch in the air and just shoot down some planes, maybe while trying to see if I'm burning too much fuel, or just have to ease on the stick because I'm getting a blackout because I'm turning too tight. So it's almost right there, right at the point where it's fun and it's easy-ish to learn.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's hard to master.
Yeah. It's what it is it's serious about it, but it's not trying to beat you over the head with it.
Yeah. Because sometimes you just want to relax and have fun. And I think it does this well enough to, justify, it's what, $11 now, 12?
Yeah, I don't think it's much. It's
really, really not that price. It's $22.79 now.
Right. Okay.
Still, it's really less pricey than DCS and buying some additional planes and so on and so on.
We won't. Yeah, we don't need to get into that. But there's not a ton more to say about it, because it is. It's tiny combat. It is actually it's quite a small game. It's a single island. You can fly end to end in maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah.
but at the same time, it does a lot of things really well. And it's, I really enjoy it as that kind of, that middle point you're talking about, that, I don't have I've worked late or whatever, and I want to fly around for a little bit, and then I want to go to bed.
Yeah.
And it's just great for that. It's like you're in, you're out. And for me, someone who plays a lot of Flight Simulator and just gets really in depth with it, sometimes it's nice to step back and go into something that it's fun and straightforward, but it's not ridiculous. It's not a ridiculous arcade game. It still like takes the idea of it quite seriously, but it does it in an accessible, straightforward way.
Yeah, and you talked about being ridiculous. I remember the mission in Ace Combat. I mean, the whole Ace Combat series is completely over the top. I've only played the 7th installment, but I remember clearly a mission where you're flying in some canyon, so already the visibility and maneuverability are limited, and then you get some tornadoes in there. And you have to fly around and shoot down planes and just escape being hit by lightning and so on and so on. And you're like, what am I doing here? I mean,
yeah.
And so I think, once again, like you said, there's not much to say because it's a small indie game.
It's a small. It is, and I mean it's still in early access, so it's only like that. There will be more. It's just at this point, it's like you fly one plane, you bomb some stuff, you shoot some Russians, and like that's it. It's a very straightforward thing, but it is it hasn't set itself out to try and do too much. Like it has set its sights very reasonably, and I think it does them very well. And
I mean, shooting Russians is quite topical these days, so I'm guessing
it is extremely popular right now.
I mean, for Ukrainians, I'm not advocating for World War III. I'm really not going that far, but
this seems like an island that might be in the Pacific somewhere. It seems quite pleasant.
Yeah,
like, it's a nice blue sky with I think there are clouds, but
I mean, besides the bombing and the dogfighting and the explosions and the noise of the engines, it's quite nice for a place.
I mean, it's, you get by the details. It's fine.
Yeah. Would you recommend Tiny Combat Arena for, and if so, for which kind of player, maybe?
I would absolutely recommend Tiny Combat Arena. I don't know that I would enjoy it as much on a controller, because I've only played it with like my setup.
Yeah, the full kit, the full...
which includes like a thing where I hook my phone to the computer, and like when I turn my head in the game moves.
Wow.
So like, yeah.
Okay,
so like
you're there. Okay.
It's not quite VR, but it's quite good. So it's a bit above like... It's not something you were like, well, maybe I can play with a keyboard and see if I enjoy it. Like, I don't think it's quite that. Like, if you're not interested in a flight simulator as like something at least a little challenging, where there is stuff to learn and to figure out, it's probably not what you're looking for. But if you were like me and you spent any time playing flight simulators as a child because you watched a little too much Top Gun, it's like... Once you get past figuring out where to do your controls and stuff, and like if you've flown a plane, it's like, it's great. I love it. Like, absolutely, highly recommend it. I'm a huge fan. I think this is the most I've liked any of the games we've played. Like unconditionally, like, this does exactly what I want it to do. It's fantastic.
Wow, well, that's good to know, because I remember a certain game that we won't name that you absolutely
we nearly made it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I would recommend it too. I have to say, because I was used, like I said, to more arcadey titles, and I was maybe looking, for example, using the machine gun on the plane. I was looking maybe for reticle to see at least where I'm shooting.
Oh, You can do that.
Maybe I wasn't pressing the good button and the right button and so on. And that's maybe my other, don't want to say gripe, my other point where I was a bit not disappointed, but
I don't think there was any training in it, which I think is an issue.
I think that's the point.
Yeah.
I would have taken 15 seconds of the first time you do a sortie with some kind of controller or joystick. They say, okay, if you want to do this, press this. If you want to do that, press that, and that's it. 15 seconds, and I can figure out the rest by myself. But now it's like, okay, you can go, you can practice around, you can try the whole combat war stuff, but we will not help you at all to figure out what's going on. And so it's a bit trial and error, and at least they have the decency, if you want to do a training sortie, to just put you in easy mode first, and so the other planes don't shoot at you. But I was thinking that if that was to be the case, I was getting shot at by with missiles or something else, and I was thinking, I don't even know where the ECM's button is. I don't know what to, and so that's maybe the one thing that I would like to see in the next version, maybe. And that's
and I think that's a fair criticism. Like as someone who I learned all this stuff doing more complex things that this was like a slightly different plane that I'm used to flying, but like, okay, like this is all sort of like, I understand how this all like functions and the whatever, but that was, I had spent a lot of time learning that elsewhere. So I just knew it from other stuff. So I understand like where you're coming from, that is not, that there is a learning curve there that I didn't really have to deal with, but that there's really nothing to handhold you there. Like there's nothing to get you there. You kind of have to just sort of brute force your way into learning how it works.
But you can still just go into the menu and check the options and check the controls. That's it.
It's not impossible. It's just it doesn't have the hand holding of like a bigger game essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing this will come, like I said, in the next version or something. I mean, I don't think that MicroProse will go to the length of catering just to that small niche of people that already know their way around the plane and just want to, like we said, something different. Just want to play something different that's not DCS, that's not Afterburner. That's not really a good example, but I cannot think, maybe Ace Combat or whatever. So I'm guessing they'll get to it. But like we said, it's one guy. So it's coming around eventually, but it's still playable right now. It's still good and fun and
the whole thing works. Like there are no major bugs or whatever. Like you can just jump in and play.
And I will maybe just suggest put some Kenny logins on YouTube before you launch the game and just go straight at it. And that's going to be one hell of a ride. Well, thank you, Robert, for this, being with me to talk about Tiny Combat Arena, of course.
I mean, thank you for indulging my enthusiasm for this one.
I mean, we're trying to diversify our games. We try to diversify our genre, so I think it's coming along pretty well. And for people listening right now, of course, thank you very much for being there. If you want to catch up on previous episodes, you can find them on pieuvre.ca. We're also on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and our host, Balado Quebec. Until next time.
Goodbye.